Taoiseach, if I missed it, apologies. Which Cabinet subcommittee or group is dealing with the issue of arts and culture, or is there any? I would hate to think that this area has been overlooked, particularly given the really dire plight of performers, musicians, arts workers, crew, events people who once again are out protesting in the case of the events people whose incomes and livelihoods have been hammered by the current crisis and for whom very little support, particularly for the events sector, has been forthcoming. So are any of your subcommittees looking at this area, because it's urgent? Secondly, do you really think it's a good idea that we now have this new oversight committee chaired by Martin Fraser to essentially, I don't know what, finesse the public health advice received by NEFIT? Is this really the way to deal with the huge inconsistencies and confusion around public health advice, that we now have the expert advisory group, we've NEFIT, we've this committee, we've got the government? When you consider that we have, you know, the roadmap saying you shouldn't leave Dublin, the Minister for Health saying you can leave Dublin, the Taoiseach saying last night, you yourself saying you're not sure, and Pascal Donoghue this morning saying you shouldn't leave the city. I mean, do we really need even further layers of confusion piled on top of that?
In terms of the, I think Deputy Boyd Barrett asked about arts and culture. There isn't a specific Cabinet subcommittee on arts and culture. There's not a Cabinet subcommittee on every department. There are some key areas: housing, health and climate change, COVID, and the Committee on Europe, and social affairs and education, as I've outlined. The issue around events and the issue around supporting financially and economically different sectors comes under the remit of the Cabinet Committee on Recovery, Economic Recovery and Investment. It's that committee would have approved of the wage subsidy scheme, of the pandemic unemployment payment and its extension out and its opening up to new entrants, and has also considered the issue of sectors that don't fall readily into those particular interventions to date. The Restart Grant, all of those would have come through that committee, and the various, the commercial rates relief that has been offered to a whole range and host of businesses out there, the credit loan guarantee scheme, the microfinance and so on. All those initiatives would have come through that particular committee. It will also be considering what tangibly and what is possible in terms of supporting companies and sectors and individuals in, self-employed in particular sectors, like we discussed yesterday, in the arts, events, taxis and others. And then Minister Catherine Martin obviously is engaging with the arts sector on an ongoing basis in relation to dealing with COVID and the impact of COVID on their situation. The Cabinet Committee on Government Coordination, its principal purpose is preparation for Cabinet itself in terms of issues that might arise at Cabinet and in terms of various initiatives to make sure that there's that everything's agreed and so forth. And it performs a very useful function in terms of, given that it's a three-party coalition, that it performs a very useful function in making sure that there's agreement on the issues that will go to Cabinet, and that all of those particular members have been thought through in all respects.